Hey, it's Alex here from Cerbos, and I'm pleased to announce that Cerbos Hub is now generally available. Now, if you're wondering what Cerbos is a scalable and extensible authorization layer for your applications. It helps product, security, and development teams to work together to take a much more policy-based approach for defining authorization logic. You may have heard of terms like RBAC and ABAC and PBAC. This is ultimately what Cerbos allows you to do as policy rather than code. The open source policy decision point is being used by hundreds of companies today to define their authorization logic in a versionable, testable, auditable way as policy. And they're running and deploying these policy decision points inside of their application. So they no longer have to hard code all that authorization logic into the actual application code, and ultimately freeing them up to focus on the core business value and ultimately the feature capabilities of the actual application. Now, one of the beauties of the Cerbos open source policy decision point is how extensible it is. And with extensibility comes all sorts of decisions you have to make around how you set up and run and deploy it inside of your architecture. What Cerbos Hub is we've taken the best practice we've seen out there from these hundreds of companies running Cerbos today and built them into a managed control plane or a policy administration point, to use their formal terminology. And the Cerbos policy administration point, the Cerbos Hub, really today allows you to do three core things. First off, it simplifies policy management. At the core of Cerbos Hub is a managed CI/CD pipeline. So you connect it up to where you store your policies. So a GitHub repo, you connect with our GitHub app. Cerbos Hub then picks up any changes that occur to your policies and runs them through a whole pipeline. And the first thing we do there is actually verify that your policies are valid. So on every change that's being pushed through, we check your policies against what Cerbos expects. We then run any particular tests that have been defined. One of the beauties of using Cerbos for your policies is, as well as define your authorization logic, you can then define the tests that run alongside it. And Cerbos Hub will run those as a CI step for you. And at the end of that process, Cerbos Hub manages and rolls out the policy updates and policy changes to those decision points that are still running inside of your infrastructure. So it's a bit of a hybrid architecture there. Policy decision points run locally. Cerbos Hub is a central management platform for those and the control plane for those. So those connected instances are all managed and versioned and controlled by Cerbos Hub in terms of which version of policies they get, etc. So whether your infrastructure is on-prem, in the cloud, hybrid, dedicated hardware, Cerbos can fit into that architecture with those local decision points and the hub as a management layer. And at the core of Cerbos Hub really is about how Cerbos manages the change of those policies. So at the end of your CI, when Cerbos Hub says, right, there's a new set of policies that have been built, compiled, tested, Cerbos Hub does the work to actually distribute it to all those connected instances and roll out those updates in a coordinated manner, which is actually one of the challenges of using just the open source project. And Cerbos Hub solves that overhead for you. One of the other areas we saw a lot when working with customers using Cerbos Hub and Cerbos, the open source project, is trying to solve for the cases where you can't necessarily run and deploy a decision point. So when you think about how you deploy a service, you generally think of like taking a container, running it in Kubernetes or putting it on a VM somewhere. And that works for your backend services, but there's a whole class of authorization where you want to just simply show or hide UI components, or actually how on a client device toggle particular user interface pieces based on a user's role or access controls. So what we did with Cerbos Hub is release a capability called embedded policy decision points. And as part of the Cerbos Hub pipeline, when we compile, test, validate your policies, as well as creating a version of your policies that get pushed to your backend policy decision points, we also generate what we call our embedded policy decision point, which underneath is a WebAssembly module, which can then be pulled down into edge functions. It can be pulled down onto clients. It can be pulled down onto web browsers, for example. And it's because it's built from the same pipeline that's building your policies that run on your backend. Cerbos embedded policy decision points also contain the policies from the same source of truth, and it then allows you to do these very quick, low latency, no backend round trip, no need to expose an internal backend service to the clients, decisioning right there on device. So when you have that UI form where you want to enable only certain roles or users with certain permissions to see certain menu items or show particular form elements that are editable, the Cerbos embedded policy decision point enables you to do exactly that. And again, that's all built and managed and coordinated using Cerbos Hub. And the final area we really listened to our users on and built out is what we call the policy playground. So we have a robust policy authoring and testing framework, and this exposes itself in a way to users through our policy playground, which is an embedded, collaborative, web-based, browser-based IDE for writing your policies. So it can read your policies from your policy store, load them up into an IDE, a la VS Code, and allows you to actually iteratively and collaboratively work together on your policies. So we're in the world of remote work now, so you might have an engineer and a product manager working together inside of one Cerbos Hub playground with those policies loaded in, and they can collaboratively, sort of Google Docs style, work together on a particular policy. And inside that playground environment, we also run all your tests. We compile, test, validate, give you things like autocomplete and IntelliSense as you work on your policies, and then also show you, as you're working your policies live, what impact a change might have. So these particular actions before were allowed, now they're denied. We run all your tests as well. So if you define those test cases, we pull those up and show you visually kind of which tests are passing as well. And then when you go and update those policies back to your policy store, the rest of Cerbos Hub CI pipeline kicks in, builds, compiles, tests, validates, and then rolls out those changes both to your backend instances and keeping your embedded versions up to date as well. So across these three capabilities, the policy management with the CI/CD pipeline, the embeddable policy decision points for solving those client edge use cases, and then the robust policy playground and workflows, Cerbos Hub takes away a lot of the overhead and management of running Cerbos open source policy decision points. It gives you all that power, but also gives you that peace of mind to making sure that your authorization stack and your authorization logic is set up the best way it can be, that's fully versioned, testable, and auditable. So please go and check out Cerbos Hub today. You can find out more on the website, and I will speak to you all very soon. Thanks.